You're listening to the 52 Weeks podcast. Hello, my name's Steph, and February has a way of having us reflect on love. Whether you're in love, whether you're healing from a past heartbreak, whether you're single and you're like, maybe I'm ready to mingle. And so I wanted to bring back an expert from last year who I had so much fun chatting with. I'm just going to read her bio for you guys. She is the author of Date Your Worth, Not Your Wound. And it's really cool because as a certified relationship and boundaries coach, she helps high achieving women stop settling and start choosing emotionally available, committed, ready partners. So let me introduce you to the one, the only
Rachel Rose.
Okay, so Rachel, since this February tends to spotlight relationships, for someone who's feeling behind or lonely or discouraged right now, like what would you like them to hear to start off?
Oh, I love that. I think every Valentine's Day should be thought of as this time for renewal because it's a reminder that love is in so many different forms all over the world. And that it still exists. Like, no matter what kind of propaganda you see on social media, people as we speak are enjoying their honeymoon night, for example, after a great wedding day all over the world in so many different languages. And so I really feel that Valentine's Day, if you can get rid of the noise, and some of the shame that is associated sometimes with it when you are single, and just look at it as a chance for possibility. I always talk to clients and say, what about if this was your last Valentine's Day single? Think about it as a signal for hope, rather than this pressure of you've got to be in a certain part of your life or you've got to be with someone in order to feel validated, by other people.
It's like that holiday that it's very apparent if you're single, right? Like other
Yeah.
holidays are more
Yeah.
like with family and friends, the Valentine's Day. And I want your opinion for those gals in a relationship. Maybe they're married, maybe it's a few months in, a few years in. I know for a lot of my friends that Valentine's Day ends up being a day of disappointment often, even if they're in relationships.
Yeah.
Because there's expectations of what,
Mm.
like, the guy should be doing to show their love. So can we talk a little bit about that?
Not only Valentine's Day, but I think relationships in general. Sometimes, and again, I think social media has way more power than sometimes we give it credit for, because you are conditioning your mind every single time that you go on there. Like, the algorithm is not just this funny technical word. It's conditioning. You're conditioning yourself to see what is normal. Side note, that's why, for example, if you're going through some sort of weight loss journey or fitness journey and you're following people that don't look like you in terms of your body type, you're conditioning yourself to say like your body type isn't normal, which is rubbish. And so it's the same with social media, this overconsumption of these perfect Instagram couples. There's just recently been a very famous couple who everyone thought was going to be fine, and they've got their kids and they've just moved into a big house and they've just broken up. So you get this distorted reality that these different relationships you see online are so perfect. And so there's this almost exaggerated expectation from men to have the, massive Valentine's Day celebrations, to propose, like they've got to propose on that day. And it's beautiful. Like some men, yes, like that is their love language. But most of their love languages are not that. Most men don't do massive gestures like this. And it's not to say that, I don't want to kill anybody's dream and say you're never going to find someone like this, but just understand that, people are putting things out there because it's content. And a lot of these couples and influencers get paid, for these big grand events that, slowly erode in someone's sense of feeling secure in a relationship because they're not getting that, but it's not really based on reality. So I think the reminder, if you're in a relationship, is just keep your expectations in line with what reality is. If your man's never given you flowers, he's not suddenly, gonna be like, okay, I've got to do this today. And if he does, then that's great. But that's who you chose, that's the person that you chose. So my point is, don't expect someone to completely morph into this like Casanova on the day of Valentine's Day, just because the expectation is so hyped through marketing, through social media, and through maybe other people who, who are showing off their relationship, but really it's just the highlight reel. You've got to live in your own reality and your own timeline. And just remember that, yes, Valentine's Day is a great day to show someone like you really care about them. But it's what happens outside of Valentine's Day that's really important. On the flip side, you do get guys who are, like I was saying, phenomenal at delivering these hundreds of roses, and you see these girls and they're like, wow, I've just got this, and the rest of the time the guy is nowhere to be seen, probably has another woman in a different continent that she doesn't know of. So it's not, all of these things don't matter. Like, what about the relationship? What about the health of the relationship? Is this someone you can grow with? Is this someone who respects you, who loves you on a daily basis? That should really be the focus, and Valentine's Day is just a bonus.
I didn't think about that with social media though, like these posts, because you do see a lot of like the guys like being like, I'm going to go get stuff for Valentine's Day or whatever. And I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, like those could be brand things too, that they aren't coming up with all of
100%.
that, like, and so it
Yeah.
really, it does shift of, it's not real. It's not real.
No, it's not. Most of it is not real. Like, can I just say as well, like, do you know how expensive those roses are? The ones that are like 500 roses. We're talking in the thousands sometimes, like depending on the quality of. I'm a like rose connoisseur, not just because it's my surname, but I love rose, my favorite flower. Like,
Mhm.
there's obviously different levels of quality of roses, and if we're talking like the top quality, we're talking thousands easily. You've just got to put it into perspective. If you're looking at an NBA basketball player, then maybe yes, it's probably chunk change for him. But a lot of these people are being paid for the branding and yeah, just having this showy kind of lifestyle because it feeds their own brand, their own influencer job. For a lot of people, this is their job that they've got to actually prove to whatever authority that they're living in wherever the world, that they have an actual career, an actual job. So they really do have to go above and beyond, get the brand deals, and be paid. Sorry. Sorry to de-glamorize that for everybody, but yeah, it's just not the norm. These are exception. It's great if you land someone like this, but you know, keep it in line with what reality is.
Yeah. No, I see, and this is why I wanted to pick your brain on all this. I just feel like you're so fun to talk to. So,
I
y
was very
we
excited to come here. I was like, yes.
so I wanna
Good
sort of
stuff.
dive in because I was going through, your like, all the press that you've done. Holy cow,
Mhm.
you have been featured in so many big names. I was like, "Yeah, go Rachel." But one
Thank
thing
you.
that I thought was really interesting as we're talking about couples who are in relationships, whether it's boyfriend, girlfriend, like husband, wife, engaged, or whatnot, you were asked by Glamour magazine as an expert about healthy fighting, and this came
Mm.
because, George Clooney talked about how him and his wife never fought, and people were like, "Okay, like, is that healthy? What's going on?" And not to, like, judge the Clooneys, it's just like, what's your opinion of what healthy fighting is?
Yeah, so I personally feel like any relationship, platonic or romantic, is gonna have conflict. Like, I think some people, when we think about, for example, dating culture, a lot of people are in this cycle of getting rid of people very early, like slowly or very quickly after the infatuation stage, I should say, because they don't expect conflict. They think conflict means incompatibility, when conflict is that space that you need in every single relationship to move forward and enforce new boundaries so that the other person knows how to treat you. That's all it is. And you're bound to have conflict. Anybody who's walking through life and they don't have any conflict with anybody, it's most likely people pleasing, is most likely surface. I don't know anybody who's in a long-term, deep relationship where there's, real emotional availability and vulnerability and they never fight. I don't know anybody like that. So, it just calls into question, like, again, like we're not specifically saying like, hey, there's something wrong with the Clooney's relationship, but if we're looking on a broader sense, conflict is basically two people's values. Everybody's been raised by imperfect human beings, as we all are, with their own baggage. And so we all have our own ideas of how we want to be treated and how relationships should be. Of course, you're going to clash with somebody else because you're not going to have the exact blueprint DNA upbringing that they're going to have. So there are going to be things where you butt heads about. And obviously, that's going to be on a spectrum. It could be, crazy, like, okay, we need to break up, and it could just be a little bit of a disagreement. But conflict will always be present in a relationship, in my opinion, that's healthy and that's actually alive and isn't just this stale, almost like artificial kind of plant. It's not growing. And so healthy conflict for me is where you get to voice your concerns or your opinions, and you know that your partner is emotionally safe and vice versa. So bringing up something that bothers you is not basically you walking into a battlefield. This other person also understands that conflict is a place for growth, is an opportunity to move the relationship forward and to dive deeper into, who you are. And that's why really in theory, when we get into relationships, it would be lovely if they were like lifelong, because it probably takes that long to really get to know someone. There's plenty of examples of celebrities who are married for like 25 years and they still don't know the other person, because we are layers and layers and layers and layers of memories, of ideas, of everything. We're very complex creatures, so seeing that as this mechanism for growth is going to help you penetrate a lot of the different sides and layers to your partner. And so if you look at it through that lens, you're never going to feel like, oh gosh, let me just tiptoe around and not bother them, because actually it's going to do the opposite. I feel, when you're tiptoeing around your partner and you're trying to be perfect, I feel two things happen. You either build resentment because obviously you have needs, and if you're never ever speaking about them, then they don't get met. And then resentment builds, and unfortunately you have this silent anger within you, and one day it could just be like they burnt the scrambled eggs and you explode. So there's that. And then also you could people please to an extent where you think you're doing everything right because you're not bringing any conflict. But actually it's one, I think, unauthentic, and two, manipulative, because even though you're not trying to harm the other person, you are trying to manipulate and kind of coerce their behavior towards you by being very good and on your best behavior, which, even someone who's not necessarily super woo or super intuitive will pick up on. Like, as human beings, we know when someone's not real with us. And so it will most likely end up in a breakup if someone really needs someone who's a bit more real, and they start detecting that you're just basically this walking robot who's just doing everything they say. That there's nothing attractive about that, actually. And there's several examples as well, like, again, celebrities where someone has tried to be everything that the other person wants them to be, and they still get left, like they still get abandoned, because the other person realizes, hey, actually, I'm not actually with someone who's showing up as their actual selves. They're showing me this model of who they think they should be, and I can't relate to that.
It's interesting going back to what you said at the beginning of fighting versus conflict. And I think that it's
Hmm.
very easy for someone to be like, oh, we don't fight because the not yelling matches, right? Because I think that especially if you are dating as you're getting older, like you've had more partners and you see that like there are those people that can trigger you and that you
Hmm.
don't like how you communicate. Maybe
Yes.
they're yelling and you feel like the only way you could get back is to like yell, but that's different than the conflict, like what you were saying. And so
Mm,
I like that that it I don't know the word. I liked how you phrased that because it's like, yeah, of course you aren't gonna always get along with someone. They aren't a clone of you. You're gonna have a different way that
yes.
you're supposed to load the dishwasher. You know, you're gonna have different ideas of what you need to do for Christmas, for your tradition. And that's okay. And that's
Yes.
conflict. It's not like a full on like fighting, yelling, name calling match.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. I think the fighting is the escalation of two people who don't know how to deal with conflict from a place of emotional safety. It's the escalation from that. And I think that just comes from going from 0 to 100 in the relationship. Perhaps like the good times and, the dopamine hit parts of the relationship are the things that are on the forefront, but there's not enough practice in repair. And that's what ends, people in fighting and showing up as their worst selves with certain people, like you said, which is so spot on. And I think that's just a result of, yeah, this lack of practice. And it's funny because two people can be drawn together, and yes, when everything is good is fine. But when it comes to conflict, if they've both had, for example, childhoods where they didn't have that practice, they didn't have anybody to model what that looked like in a healthy way, then yes, you're going to trigger each other because neither of your emotional needs are met. And the result is that you're having the shouting match of who's going to be heard, but no one's actually listening to anybody. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I never really, like, thought about that until you were explaining all that. It makes me even more so in looking for a partner, like, look for someone who, when they're upset, that they're nice and not calling me names because, like,
Yes.
that just
So
hurts. Like,
important.
I'm such a words of affirmation that, like, that just shuts me down, but, like, that they're not quick to yell because I feel like if I'm being yelled at, I feel like a little kid that just, like, wants to go hide in a corner. Like, that's not
Yeah.
an ideal thing for me.
Exactly. No, I agree, and I think Love is Blind. Like, and I've decided that I'm gonna go cold turkey and not watch any more seasons. Um, I, I'm an addict. I think, Steph. Like, I've watched all the countries, and I think, like, you can agree, the last US season was just insane.
Oh, yeah.
Like, proper shit show. Who casted
Yeah,
these
yeah.
people? Like, so every season, though, like a friend of mine, we watch it and we dissect everybody. But one key thing that I think is so prevalent, like particularly for, well, I think for all of them, but particularly I always find for the US version, no offense, like I love you guys so
No, you're good.
much, but I feel like you guys are so hung up on things that just don't matter. Like, your dog's called Sammy. My dog is also called Sammy. No. Your grandma was, or your granddad was in the army. So was mine.
Yeah,
Then they
yeah,
do the like the zoom and it's like, do you think this means that's your soulmate? Like, I don't get it. Instead of asking things like, how do you deal with conflict? Do you know how to repair a fight?
yeah.
Right? So that's
No,
it's
I've
true.
actually heard, especially like in where you're at in like the UK and stuff, that you guys more focus on if the chat is good type of thing, where the US,
Yeah.
like I've heard that before, where like you said, it is a little bit more of these dumb, superficial, or like that episode where she's like, "My dad had diabetes. Your son has
Yeah, yeah.
diabetes." Like
Yeah.
that's, and
So
not to like diminish. I get that people can feel stuff, but I get what you're saying of that, that sometimes it's like, "Well, that was such a cute story of how we met, you don't wanna let go of it," and Matthew Hussey,
yeah,
he talking to about how, like, it just because the mansion had a view, if there's no one there to build it with you, it doesn't do any good, like
exactly. Oh,
if
Matthew.
you're
No,
talking
that's a good
about building your
analogy.
relationship as a mansion. So,
Y-
anyways, no
yeah.
offense taken there at all, but I think it's true. Like sometimes we can get so caught up in that was such a great date. That must be the one. No, maybe they're just a
Yes.
really good dater because they're a serial dater and they don't commit.
And also, how about we recommend when we sorry, we remember that you are part of this dynamic. You're 50% of the dynamic. You're there, vibrant. You get along with anyone. You could get along with, a dead corpse. Like, you're the vibrant one bringing the energy too. And so when people are like flabbergasted in a date situation, they're like, oh my God, that was so good. It's like, please remember you brought 50% of that. Half of it is you. And also the banter stuff. So it's banter. So like, oh my God, that's so true. I think you definitely got me back there. Like in Britain, it's very much like, he's got to have banter. And it's like, is banter going to pay the bills? Like, is banter going to be there when you're delivering your first child? No. Like, that's not, that's not the foundation of compatibility for a long-term relationship, whether or not like, and a lot of the times in Britain, banter is like you're kind of dissing each other. And it's just, for me, if someone is just like, oh yeah, banter's number one, it rings some like alarms for me. It's a bit of a yellow pink flag because banter is usually like, yeah, you throw it back, it's funny, whatever, but it's a little bit, if it's overused, it's an avoidant tactic, right? Because you can't get close to somebody if someone's batting away something back at you. So if that is a primary part of your communication, then you may need a little bit of help. I'm sorry, but that can't be something that determines whether you think someone's a long-term compatible match for you, whether they got banter. Jeez.
I I love talking about this so much because recently, like, there's 2 podcasts that have become my favorite, and they're radio shows, right? So it's, like,
Okay.
actual, like, DJs who, like, are just good at talking to people, but it's called one is called The Second Date Update, and the other
Okay.
is The Jubal Show, and it's so
Okay.
interesting how people are not self-aware, like, guys and girls, like, because as you're talking about, you love, like, watching the reality TV shows because you get to sort of dissect
Yeah.
it. You'll be listening and, like, the person will be like, "Oh my gosh, it was such a great date. Like, the conversation was so funny. It was awesome. The chemistry was there. I don't know if they are calling me back." And then they'll call the person and the person will be like, "They just talked about themselves the whole time. Like, didn't ask me a
Oh.
single question. Like, I'm not interested," you know? And so how that
Mm.
that perception could be so
Yeah, it's funny because like two people could be there on one date, but they're kind of on two different dates, right? Like from their
Mhm.
experience.
So,
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, with you, because your book, "Date Your Worth, Not Your Wound," right? Yeah, pull out that book,
Yes.
show us that, these past relationship wounds, they can
Mhm.
be a little heavy, and it's hard where you start to get triggered with things, but how do you feel like people can really heal that wound of their
Mm.
past dating? I know it's not just like one generic answer, but like, what's your advice for that?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, I mean, I'll refer to the book. Like in the book, I talk about wounds specifically. There's a whole area about it, or a whole, few parts or key parts in the book that you need to really read. And I talk about the three core love wounds, which, I won't spoil it for you. I'll let you guys dive into the book and have a look at that and the trainings that are associated with that as well, that are free and exclusive. But if we're talking just like very, summarizing it for this episode, I think, first of all, there's no such thing as someone being completely healed and they have to, go on like an ashram and, hundreds of yoga retreats and be 100% healed before they can go and date. I think healing, if you're on, on a healing marathon, it can become very theory based and you don't actually get to practice. Because you're healing interpersonal relationship wounds, you need to be in interpersonal relationships and practice and see what's going on. Think about it a little bit like exercising a muscle. So you are going to go in there knowing that you're on your healing journey and you will get triggered, but then you start to emotionally regulate much better. Doesn't mean that you're like ironclad. So, if someone flops you, for example, you're really excited about them and they just suddenly change like right before a date, it doesn't mean that you're so bulletproof and non-human that you don't feel anything, you don't feel disappointment. But instead of, going to chat GPT, screenshotting everything, asking chat what you should say, writing a paragraph to someone that you barely know because you can't contain your emotions, you instead sit with what you're feeling and own what you're feeling and really challenge all of the ideas that come up for you. If someone 24 hours ago, for example, was so into you, they've been into you the whole week, that you've spoken every day, and then for some reason, we don't know, just before the date, they are acting strange. How can that, first of all, mean anything about you? How can 24 hours change and all of a sudden it means that you weren't good enough, how can it mean, for example, the whole connection was completely fake? It's not. It's very rarely about you if that's something that's happening to you. And this kind of behavior when people ghost or like they cancel last minute or whatever, it's very much based on their own behavior, their values and their capacity. And really dealing with your own wounds and what those core wounds are. And again, in the book, there's exercises to help you identify what your personal core love wound is, so that that can be your primary focus on working on, and that can be your primary focus when you're looking at emotional regulation. And you can start leaving them with their own emotional responsibility, which is, hey, I messed up with this woman, for example. I didn't give her a call back. I didn't arrange a date properly. That's their responsibility, instead of going into fix mode, which is what you do when you go in and you don't even give the situation the room to breathe so that there's space and people can own their stuff, you know? They can own the fact that, yeah, they have let you down, they have disappointed you. And you can sit in yourself and work through all the different things that, you know, that rejection wound that's coming through, or that feeling of not feeling that you're worthy enough. You can work through that yourself, because this person is just a little catalyst of a bigger picture of things that have built up in terms of evidence of what you believe you deserve to have and who you are. That can't be their responsibility. You swiped them like right 5 days ago. How can that be? They're not the core source of it. So you've got to be the one to really go into the dating game, know that actually dating more is healing you. You know, it's preparing you every single time you meet somebody. It's for a reason. They're healing a part of you so that you can be even more prepared for the person that you're supposed to be in a much more like long-term stable relationship with. So if you see it like that and not the scary thing where, oh my God, my wound, I'm imperfect, there's something wrong with me, they're going to see the real me. Yeah, good. They should see the real you. But the wound part that comes up as a part of a trigger of feeling rejected or abandoned, that's your work. Like that's 100% your responsibility. And the way that they treat you in their behavior and the ghosting and the very avoidant type behavior, that's theirs. So yeah, I think, yeah, just looking
Man,
at your wounds is, yeah.
I I like I am just sitting here being like, I wish I could call you every time I feel like rejected, but I love what you're saying of I think that that's powerful, sitting in it and being like, hey, you don't have to be responsible. I think that you're so right. Like sometimes it's like if you know someone shifted and they haven't like followed up about the date that day, you don't have to send that text. You don't like I think I was when I was younger was so conditioned like if I don't like do all that I can, then it's my fault, and it's like,
Oh my
no,
God,
then this
100%.
person's just not is it to you, like, and that's
Yeah.
okay. And so I
Yeah.
think that like, especially because this year I am going to really like focus on dating with intention and dating to find that needle in the
Yes.
haystack. But I have been
Love.
like, I've had a little bit of fear around it because I love myself right now. I love my life. I'm not
Mm.
distracted by a guy. And I've been like, I just don't like, I hope that I don't revert back. And this is giving me just some tools to be like, no, when those times that you feel rejected come, sit with it for a second. Maybe journal
Yeah.
it. Maybe do an audio message about it. Like, and I loved how you said it's
Yes.
not like that man you only knew for a little blimp. Like it's not really about
Yeah.
him. It's about like the guy that he sort of represents in your past or whatnot. Anyways, it's
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
so cool to hear your perspective on it.
Yeah. I think, you know, if you can go in there, and I love that you said that you love your life. Like that's you're basically perfect candidate for attracting somebody who also loves their life, and you're just two whole people. You know, not looking to trigger the other person. You're more likely to meet someone more secure, and more likely, Steph, to you like your eyes are going to be wide open when you're dating, right? Like I'll give you an example of the kind of people that you could very likely come across, and you'll most likely not take that as something you would engage in, because it's just false. And like there's a lot of guys out there with this like short-term open to long business, where, you know, taken from my experience, short-term open to long is normally, actually, I just want short term. I like the idea of long term. I don't have the capacity for long term. But if I dangle long term enough, we will have sexual and emotional intimacy that serves me enough. And then by the time you ask for real commitment, I will be gone. And I will say that you're taking this too seriously because I said I was short, open to long. It's a complete trap. So I feel like people like yourself, and I'm sure I feel like a lot of people in general, men and women, are really focused this year, and they're just like, no, no nonsense. Like, let's get really intentional about it. These are the kind of people when like you meet a man like this, like on wherever the apps or in real life, you're going to be like, Actually, I would rather, and I really recommend people, take this away and use this line. That's really interesting. You seem like a lovely person. I respect that you're, short, open to long, whatever your thing is. But I personally don't have that much time. I'm a very busy person. I do a lot in my life. I really enjoy my life. My life is really full. So actually, this point where I am, I only have the capacity to invest in people who are intentionally looking for a life partner or looking for someone who's long term and knows what they want and, really wants to build something together. That short, open to long person is going to disappear because they were never open to long. They were just open to all of the benefits they're going to get with you because you're there, going on these like casual, really cool dates, but they're not going anywhere. They're just serving this other person's sense of validation. They're going to disappear. Because a real person who was like, actually, yeah, I'm open to long genuinely and I'm open to building something with someone genuinely if it works, would be like, yeah, we're on the same wavelength. Don't worry about it. So yeah, so those kind of people, when you really are dating intentionally, like they won't get past you. They'll be put off you, which is what you want. You want them to be like, oof, she's too serious. Goodbye. Great. I am. I am very serious.
I love that though. No, and I think that, last time we talked, you gave different tips of how to meet people and you gave all these
Mhm.
different tips to help with dating. But I think that like empowering yourself before you're like really jumping back into dating because it is a period of time that, like, rejection can feel so personal, and it feels like we
Yeah.
talked about last time that sometimes you don't wanna, like, hope that something can happen again or whatnot, but, um, I think that, like, yeah, I'm just prepping myself, because I
Yeah.
want this time to be different and I wanna have different intentions, and it's not just like, "Oh, I'm looking for someone fun for the summer, and if it works out, great." No, like, I'm at that point where I'm like, I want to be with someone, I want to get married, I want to have that teammate, you know?
Yes. Yeah, and I think it's really interesting what you said, like, because, particularly, the dating apps, it can feel like a carousel, right? Like, okay, you've met someone, you deeply connect, you deeply, you're attached quickly. The first date either happens or doesn't happen, and then it almost feels like you just have to start again. I feel like my piece of advice with that is dating regularly, think about this year, and this is for everybody watching, as like growing a thicker skin. So anybody who's got their own business or in the corporate world, how far do you think you would get in your career or with your business if every no you were like, oh my God, let me pack this up. I'm really not good at this. If you think about how how resilient, like how many failed launches, like and on in entrepreneurship that you have to go through and how many failed interviews you have to go through or failed ideas that you pitch in the corporate world. If you packed it in when you did, you wouldn't be where you are. It's exactly the same with dating. Understand that finding that person who clicks with you, particularly if you're like a deep thinker, you're doing the personal work. Like most people on the planet are not doing the personal work, first of all, right? That's not to put a downer on it, but it's just to give you a realistic idea that when you are out dating, be so discerning because you're looking for something really specific. When things don't work out, it's not like I'm not trying to say, okay, be skeptical and nothing's ever going to work out, but you've got to understand that you're looking for a really specific person. And if it doesn't work out with people who aren't ready, that's okay. Right? Like there are going to be other opportunities. And that just helps you not fall in love with everybody with a six pack and who's 6'2", because you think they're going to be the one. It's like, finding that nuance of that person who's emotionally safe, like they have the same level of ambition that you have, they have the same values, all this kind of stuff. It's not supposed to be every 2 weeks you find that kind of person. That's just not how life works. Especially if you're looking for like a deep soulmate connection. We're talking, not once in a lifetime. I don't believe in once in a lifetime, but I believe, it's a few times in a lifetime. It's not going to be every fortnight you're going to meet your soulmate. That would be brilliant if that was the case, but it's just not. So when you have that mindset, you understand that the majority of your dating experience is growing this extra layer of skin being more discerning, treating it as a spiritual practice. You're meeting these people because they are mirroring back something in you, something to work on, something that actually you don't give enough credit for that's amazing about you. It's all a spiritual growth journey, all of this stuff. And then when you're learning and you're going along the way and you do butt heads with someone who is your a soulmate kind of connection, then that's brilliant. You get to enjoy that. But most of the journey is going to be you facing people who haven't faced a lot of their own wounds, right? And they're looking for dating to be the tool that heals them instead of, co-creating their own healing experience alongside dating. And, things won't work out and that's okay. And none of it is a reflection of your worth whatsoever. But you've just got to remember that. So yeah, I think seeing it through that lens will help people just be like, okay, yeah, I'm going to do this. This is good for me. And this is going to happen. Like, it's inevitable. I'm going to meet my person.
And as you said that, like, it doesn't reflect our worth. It's like and this is what I wish sometimes that people who've been married for decades could know about people that are single, especially because now there's generations that are older being single than ever before, right? Um,
Hmm.
is that like anyone that's single knows that they're single. They
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
that they don't have that person to call with the good news. They know that they're going to bed alone at night. Like, they know that they're single,
Yes.
and underneath that layer, there's often a feeling, even if they're like, "Oh, I'm too good for that person," at that layer, a lot of us have that feeling of not feeling good enough at some point, and so that's why I love
Mm,
why your book talks about, like, date your worth, not your wound, and that, like, our worth is, like,
yes.
constant. It's not going up and down with whatever anyone thinks of us, because I feel like that's
Exactly.
a major thing for most people who are not
Yeah.
married.
Yes. And I think you've got to see it as this thing where the our worth going up and down, right? Like you said, like I love how you've explained that according to how people treat us. Um, Definitely comes from childhood for a lot of us, right? Your mother or father is saying you're a bad girl, like you're a bad person, or you're a failure. And it just comes from that echo of like this parental figure or this person that's close to us and has an intimate relationship with us. Whatever they say is truth. And I remember, like, so I have a shaman who's amazing. And there was one thing I remember, like, learning about, like, shamanism. I don't practice anymore, but, like, that whole experience with her was amazing. Like, just learning all the shamanic practices and all this stuff. And one of the most healing things I've ever heard in my life was she said, Rachel, like, you have to really make it your life's work to not get so attached to what people say that you are, and it was particularly to do with my mum. It was like a mother wound based thing, but it doesn't matter what people say you are. You need to stop giving people so much power about like their idea of who they think you are. And it was so life changing. And so I've taken that like when it comes to love as well. Like, you've got to be able to stand on 10 toes, and it takes practice and it takes work, and you're not every day is going to be perfect. And there's going to be some people that really let you down. You're really deep into getting to know them and you're like, what the fuck is going on? Like, how can this fail months down the line? But standing 10 toes and being like, do you know what? I'm a great partner. I'm a great friend. I just want peace for myself. I stand up for people. I show up for people. I don't do anything wrong. I mean, you're not this perfect person, but you don't intentionally go out and harm anybody. I work hard. I'm doing something that gives value to people. I'm really valuable as a person. When you get that into your energy, like I said, nothing is ever bulletproof. It's not to say like you're never ever going to be upset. That's ridiculous. You're still human. You're supposed to experience all of the different emotions, the ones that we name as bad, sadness, anger, and also happiness and joy and all this stuff. So none of it is bad that you experience. But it's just knowing that, okay, I'm in this situation with this person. It hasn't worked out, but I'm still a great person, you know? If it hasn't worked out, fine. Like, maybe that's as far as we're supposed to go. Maybe that's we've learned our lessons with each other and that's the end of that soul contract and that's okay. But I'm still going to move forward in my life as the wonderful person that I am, that's like bringing joy and making a difference in the world. And, you know, how they see me, even if it ended badly, doesn't define me at all. Like it actually physically can't, because whatever they're saying in a breakup and they're yelling at me and they're saying, oh my God, you're this, or you're such an awful person, you're so selfish, couldn't possibly be accurate when you've been with them for maybe, even if it's been 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, you've been on the planet for how many, I was going to say 4 times, but like maybe people aren't as old as this, but like you've been on the planet multiple more years than the length of your relationship with this person, with lots of different types of evidence to prove that you are this wonderful person. And so this person that's your ex-partner or someone that you're dating and it's not as serious calls you out on something. When you weigh up the evidence that you have in life that you actually are doing so much for the world and you're a wonderful person and you show up in so many different people's lives, it holds so little weight, and you realize it, how they see you couldn't possibly be the definition of who you are, because the relationship you had with them was like a microsecond in the comparison of the rest of your life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, like, that I feel like when I start dating, I'll have to play back this episode and remind myself. 'Cause it's easy to, like, be like, "Yeah, no," but, like, it's so hard sometimes in the moment to not let it affect us, but I
I
love
know.
everything that you said right there because it is so empowering of, like, no, like, and I loved what you said that, like, this might be just your person for, like, the moment that you're learning something or the reflection
Yeah.
of you, like, that's cool to think about.
Yeah. So, like in the book, I even say, you know, I'm not like a lot of relationship coaches who are just like, if it's not a 5 year relationship, it doesn't count. And no one's specifically saying that, but there's always this undertone of that, right? Like, oh, you had a fling in the summer, that doesn't count. They all count. Like, let's stop discounting things. Like, there are certain circumstances, for example, what are we going to tell flight attendants who have relationships? Like, all of their relationships don't count because they're going from country to country. It's all valuable. It's not about the length of the relationship. It's how someone affects your personal life and the experience you had with them and the impact they had on you and vice versa. That's what's important. So when we get rid of that, like, I mean, there are people that are together for years and years and years and what, like they're, you know, they'll tell you that they coasted along the entire relationship out of convenience. But are we going to hold more merit to them because they were worked together for 20 years when it was like miserable and they cheated on each other the entire time, but it was convenient because rent's high? No. Or are we going to say, you know, look at someone else who had a shorter relationship and they had a really like transformative experience with someone that they were only with for 6 months? So yeah, I just feel we don't need to look at the length. We need to look at the impact. And that's really what matters, really. You know, how you impacted someone's life and how they impacted yours.
Yeah, like that, like if everyone could go into dating with that mantra of like how, leaving someone a little bit better than you found them, there would be less ghosting. There would be like, just that
Yeah.
kindness, like you said, that impact.
Mm. Yeah, and I just think, you know, the more that you are at peace, you will attract more people who are less viciously ghosting and like, and you get to kind of see whatever funny behavior, if it does turn up, is most likely not anything towards you. It's their capacity. Just like I was saying, you know, not everybody's doing the work. Not everybody, I think particularly on the dating apps more than if you meet someone in real life, has all of that emotional capacity. Like the idea of actually getting into a relationship for a lot of people, like a real one, is scary. And a lot of people haven't really thought about all of you know, the shadow stuff that does come up when you're having your first sleepover with someone that you're getting to know, and oh my god, like what's my hair going to look like, and do they know I have no eyebrows really, like, and I just draw them on every day and stuff, you know, stuff like this. And or oh gosh, like now we're really getting to know each other, do they know that my family are like borderline psychotic? Are they still going to accept me? So a lot of people do run and don't have the capacity to, for example, even hold their professional lives and their romantic lives in real life. Like in their head, it sounds great, but when you look at how many hours are left in a day, they realize, oh, I don't have time to call Steph before bed because I need to get to bed. So I have at least 7 hours sleep. So maybe I need to reevaluate that. And I can't really confront Steph about that yet because I'm not ready to be vulnerable about that. You know what I mean? Like I'm just giving you examples of
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
where
yeah.
people act strange and the output is ghosting or the output is their shift in energy, but internally they're going through a lot of different things. Not to say it's okay, but it is to just give perspective that we're all humans in the end of the day. And like you said, we all want connection. And so it's less likely someone is just a vicious asshole who wants to just use and abuse people. Like it's less likely that when you're filtering properly and you're meeting people who, are a lot more on board with wanting a long-term relationship, they most likely are just dealing with themselves and their own limitations.
In wrapping up, I like to do a challenge at the end of
Mhm.
every episode. So what challenge do you wanna
Uh-oh.
give to me and the listeners? This it could be for this week, it could
Oh.
be, like, 7 days, 1 day. What do you wanna give us?
Oh my god. I'm given the challenge? Okay. Alright,
Yes.
so let's start off the year clean because we've all, even though you may not be a, like, serial ghoster, we've all kind of left situations undone at least once. So I'm gonna
Mhm.
challenge everybody and the listeners to think back to a situation that they've left things undone. Not nasty ones, not when like you probably shouldn't speak to that person again because they treated you awfully. I'm talking about where you should have been a bit more emotionally responsible and tied it up. You didn't. I think starting there is great practice. Like drafting a message that you can or don't have to send is up to you. But I think just karmically and energetically getting into the rhythm for 2026 of just like owning your piece and owning why, maybe you did a slow fade or maybe, you lost interest or you got the ick or whatever it is. And just owning your part is a really good exercise. So your challenge.
Yeah.
Da-da-da.
I love that, and I think even, like, if you look at, friendships sometimes too, like, sometimes things
Yeah,
just or family relationships. I think that's a good thing to examine any relationship, and is there something that,
yeah.
like you said, draft a text, maybe you don't need to send it, but is there something that you need to get out? I love that.
Yeah, because yeah, it's more about you, isn't it? Like, even if you did send it, however they respond is, again, no reflection of your worth or anything like that, but if you can do it from your own self and you get into the habit of it, it's a good tool to take into your next relationship.
Love that. Well, thank you so much, Rachel, for chatting with me. Like, honestly,
Thank you.
like I said, before we were recording, I was looking forward to this all day because I was like, yes, I get to chat with Rachel because
Me
the time
too.
just goes by so fast when we're chatting. And to those of you who listen to this conversation, just remember that those small things that you're doing today, whether it is in a relationship that you're pursuing, one that you're currently in, just your goals, whatever it is, the small things that you're doing today to make those changes are creating the life that you want to live tomorrow. And so keep on hustling, keep on moving forward, and I'll catch you guys next Monday.